PvE is still one of, if not the most polarizing topic in the Overwatch community. Even 3 years after its cancellation, you will still see people in forums and comment sections saying they will not try Overwatch until PvE is released, or calling Blizzard a bunch of liars for never releasing PvE. To this day, on the Steam page, Overwatch is still recovering. It still has not gotten its status out of negative. It has went from overwhelmingly negative to mostly negative, and the recent reviews are now mixed. That is how much of an impact the cancellation of PvE had. And fair enough, PvE has been talked about and promised since before the game even launched in 2016. And honestly, I'm in the camp of people, and I know it's very unpopular to say this, but I think PvE would have killed this game. Leading up to Overwatch's 2 launch, PvE had 6 years to develop. It had 6 years in development, and it feels like almost no progress was made. Because once we got those missions released in 2023, they felt like absolutely nothing special. They felt like just your average running about PvE mission. There's nothing exciting about it. There's nothing exciting about the enemies. There was no loot. There was no rewards really. And I understand that that wasn't the full product that we were going to get. It was going to be way more expansive. But honestly, I think that mode and what released alone is pretty telling of what got done in that whole time and how much more still needed to be developed. Who even knows how long this was actually in development for? Going through old footage and people talking about PvE, it sounds like half of what we know before the game got canceled was already known in 2019. Like, you see people talking about missions that Rio was one of the missions that we know about, and like, yeah, we played it back in 2019, so I'm sure things have changed. But truly, how much has changed between 2019 and 2023 leading into the cancellation? So that begs the question, what were they doing all these years? What were they doing for the 6 years leading up into Overwatch 2? What were they doing between 2019 and 2022? This was when the game was still under Jeff Kaplan. He was still the game director. And honestly, I don't feel like he gets enough shit for everything he put the Overwatch community through and the game itself through with his passion project for PvE, which you still feel the effects of to this day, and it's a mess that Aaron Keller had to clean up. And I absolutely cannot stand that Aaron Keller got zero credit from Jeff Kaplan in his most recent interview a few months ago. That bothered me so much. It's just Kaplan, oh, look at how great the Overwatch team was. The team was so great. The people I worked with was so great. And just no acknowledgement of the current Overwatch team, what they had to clean up, and what they have done since to make the game succeed. Content started to slow down in 2019 and came to a full halt in 2020 with the release of Echo. 2 years of a content drought, almost 3, until Overwatch 2 came out, which was supposed to be this whole brand new game with PvE, a new format, new heroes, new map, and in that whole time, the only thing we ever got out of that was 3 heroes, a new mode, a few new maps, the removal of 2CP, and the free-to-play model. And it's like, alright, what were they really working on for these 2 whole years? Because this doesn't seem like that much. Especially when there's a lot of signs pointing that Junker Queen was originally supposed to be released in Overwatch 1. So if they were really working on PvE this whole time, from 2016 and really picking up gear in 2019, all the way to 2022, and they still had almost nothing done, nothing new to show, I can't imagine how much more time this would have taken to actually be fully released. Because what we got, the content drop we ended up getting, was absolutely pathetic. The scale of this was absolutely insane. Each talent tree had 30 to 50 talents per hero. For 37 heroes, that can be between 1100 to 1800 total talents that will need to be created. And keep in mind, every hero released would also need their own talents. I imagine this is what they were primarily focused on, is the talent trees, which would be fine if they were actually making content that was worth the amount of effort they were putting into each of these talent trees. Because what was the end game? What was the loot? I'm trying to look all over the internet for what the loot would have been. In Overwatch, Blizzard never announced what it would have been, what the loot drops would have been. The primary form of leveling up was the talent trees. It's like, alright, we're going to build up all these talent trees, but what are we building up the talent trees for? Is there going to be like a raid-like activity like in Destiny? Is there going to be strikes? Is there going to be harder content where you're going to actually have to put together a full team? All 6 of you are going to have to communicate on comms in order to get it done. I don't think there was going to be any content like that. So were you just going to be stronger just so you could get a faster time on a replayable mission that you've done 50 times already? It doesn't seem like something most players would want to be, and they would just drop it in a few weeks. If you wanted a game like that, if you wanted a game more expansive, you would just go into Destiny, you would just go into Warframe, you would go into games that were actually made for this, not being a second thought to PvP. It seems like they did all the external work with none of the internal work. Internal work meaning, why would a player play this game in the first place? What reason do they have to progress? What loot can we offer? And what endgame content do we have? Because endgame content is the stuff that people are going to be playing the most. You play the story once, and it seems like they just never figured that out. Honestly, what would have been best case scenario for Overwatch 2 PvE? Let's assume they continue development and it released in 2025. PvE took up all the resources, so we don't have Stadium, we don't have perks, and we're not going to get this huge hero drop that we got in 2026. PvE drops in 2025, everyone has skill trees, you have the basic campaign missions, and then you have the hero missions. Hero missions were the missions that were randomized every time you went into it. So the location could change, the weather changes, and the enemy types change. So you play through the story, which takes maybe 2 to 3 days. Pick your favorite character to go through all the content with. So for this example, say Alari, right? We went through the main story with her, then you take Alari through all the hero missions. Maybe you're having fun for like a week, you're playing with friends, maybe you're exploring between different characters, trying different methods for different enemy types, you're trying different team comps, all while leveling up your character and building up its skill tree. And then after like the 2-week mark, you realize you've been fighting the same 5 enemies the entire time. There's no real end game, and the replayable content has gotten dry because there is no end game, there's no ultimate goal to strive for. Sure, some people enjoy leveling up their characters, some people try to max out every single character, but I honestly feel like the bulk of people, 80 to 90% of the player base, would not care about PvE after 2 weeks. And I want to say that PvE would have released with more content with an actual endgame, but I truly don't think it would have. There's no signs pointing towards endgame type content like a raid. The mode even having worthwhile rewards, because why would you put an extremely awesome looking skin behind a raid when you could just sell it for $80 on the Mythic shop? So during this whole time period up to the release of PvE, PvP was getting pretty neglected. You're going through horrible balance changes, heroes are very slow, we're still on a single hero season, Stadium never happened, so it feels like we're playing the same game, we're getting no new maps, so it's like morale on PvP completely died. Everyone comes in to jump on PvE, they maybe play for a week or two, it's decent to good, the replayability is not really there, maybe they try to PvP again, they load into PvP, who knows what kind of mess that would have been at the time, and then the players would have left. I don't think this game would have survived PvE getting fully developed and launched, because I don't think there was ever a solid plan for PvE to begin with. I truly think PvE should have been canceled way earlier on, and they should have just stayed focused on PvP, especially with how hot Overwatch was in 2016 to 2017. They should have just stayed on that train of PvP. Maybe they made a separate PvE game in time. They were just way in over their heads on PvE, trying to brute force it into reality, and that's just not how things work. Now in 2026, Overwatch is in the best state it has ever been in. We got 5 new heroes in a single season, and we're getting a new hero every season. That is something that would have never happened if we still had to worry about PvE. We also got Stadium and perks, and while Stadium isn't exactly in the best spot, it still did its job at the time with delivering new and exciting content to help engage the player base and keep the game afloat. I mean, at its launch, I was even really hyped about Stadium and thought it had a really bright future, and now I'm very skeptical. Regardless, it did its job, and Overwatch is definitely heading in the right direction. I think PvE was just in over its head too much. They tried to make this game something it wasn't supposed to be, and they realized how much it could spiral out of control with what they were trying to do with it, and they decided to just cut their losses before it got any worse. And I like the direction Overwatch is heading in now. It's putting the PvE behind it, it's moving forward with PvP, being a PvP centered game like it always should have been. While a PvE mode would have been nice, it's really just not what Overwatch needed. But Overwatch does deserve to have its story told, and I truly believe that a show or a movie is going to be announced at BlizzCon this year in September. Quote me on it, come back to this video when it gets announced, because I know I'm going to be right. And you know what, if it isn't announced, I want someone to make a punishment, and I'll go through with the punishment if an Overwatch show or movie is not announced this year. So if you have any ideas on what you want that punishment that I'm never going to need to do to be, drop it down in the comments below. But let me know, what are your thoughts on PvE? Were you mad that it got canceled? Are you one of those people that will never touch Overwatch again until PvE is released? Or are you satisfied with how the game is now? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next one.